Hello, my name's Jason Parks. I'm CEO of Roto Entertainment.
Hello, my name is Immersion. I'm the Chief Creative Officer and the Game Director.
So can you guys talk about this VR game? What were some of the inspirations? Because when I saw the trailer, I immediately thought like Legend of Zelda for the 64. Was that like a kind of thing you were going for?
I have played a good amount of Ocarina of Time in my day, as well as Breath of the Wild, and so many more. I mean, most certainly, definitely one of the inspirations in terms of environment, land, what we're trying to go for. Yeah, Amir, maybe you could talk a little more about that.
The whole world, we've been working the last 8 years for. The idea was in, creating a larger franchise. But the things that we inspired over the years, and not just the video game environments, as well as the avatars and Harry Potter's, the Star Wars, and multiple different the environmental, vibrant ecologies and creatures and character designs. But also, I think one of the gaming inspirations was the Uncharted, in terms of how immersive environments that can give us different exploring areas.
Mm-hmm. And I would add to that too that we've been also like akin to what someone say from we were talking with Oculus a while back, and they said we were like, if Avatar had a baby with Ferngully, that was what Rhythm of the Universe Ionia would be.
Also,
Mist, exactly. Some of our buddies over at Mist. For us, it's pretty original IP because, like Amir mentioned, it's something we've been working on for the past 8 years, and it's not even just strictly a VR game, right? Ionia is just a piece of a story of a much bigger IP, this much giant universe that we've been creating, which have been live shows, music videos, documentaries. We've been doing entertainment and digital media for 10 years at this point. And it really all started with us bringing together hundreds of musicians from around the world. I think collectively at this point over 1,000. Our original project, for example, had 90 musicians from 90 different countries who came together and wrote a song of peace, which went viral. And back in 2011, that was pretty big for us as graduates of Berklee College of Music. And then we performed that music at Symphony Hall, and then really started the company from there, and then have been working with international artists, musicians, developers, game designers, and all sorts ever since.
Can you guys talk about, obviously, when you make a game in VR, it's an experience, especially your game, it's a game that cannot be experienced out of VR. Can you talk about what went into the design and the aspect, and was it originally intended for both VR and console, or was this always a VR experience from the get-go?
It's always been focused for VR. And where a lot of other game companies might be interested in the amount of market, right? And especially when we first started this, we weren't game developers. We were documentary creators. We were filmmakers. We were live performance directors and organizers. We were literally working with nonprofits. For example, Amir and I flew to the Peruvian Amazon to film the illegal gold mine and deforestation happening there for the Amazon Aid Foundation. And we created a documentary and music video that was seen at COP20 and COP21, the United Nations conferences. So gaming wasn't even our radar, even though it was in our blood. We're both gamers. The whole team were gamers. Our network included a bunch of developers, and also doing a lot of the digital work. We realized, like, hey, we also have the skill sets inside, for example, Unreal Engine, to maybe start this. But it really was trying the Vive for the first time in 2015, was it? That a friend of ours invited us over. They had just gotten the Vive, one of the first to do so. We put it on, we saw the whale go by in the blue, and we're like, oh, this is what we're doing with the rest of our lives. We thought it was amazing. Like the fact that I could be there and I could feel the immensity of the whale, we immediately realized that this is the entertainment medium that we want to tell our story. Yeah. So it really was just an artistic decision, and we just knew that VR had to have been growing and would continue to grow because of how credible it was. We took a little bit of a risk, a little bit of gamble on that, and we think it paid off. I mean, there are more headset, 4 million Quest 2s just this year alone. So VR is definitely growing, and we're happy that's going forward. But really, we made this game for VR because it was the medium we wanted to tell our story in.
I mean, I think one of the other reason is by the time we started, not so many people was doing just only tethered for certain headsets and just ground up VR, building a game just for VR. And we were very ambitious, and being as a non-developer and a people and company that haven't done a game, a lot of people was just even like, are you guys sure you just want to start it with this way? Just as the first game in VR, you guys took a big task. But I think again, it's showing you that it pays off, and really, if you're really focused on certain things that really matters. One of the biggest thing in VR for me as an artistic director is the empathy, and how much you can take that and give the users if you plan it right. And I think that's such a big thing to achieve in a gaming world.
As filmmakers, what were some of the difficulties in creating a VR game from a storytelling perspective? Because in a film, you always have the camera, the subjects, you're controlling where your audience looks and what they're hearing. But in VR, you have a whole 360 vision. They can look anywhere, touch anything, grab anything, look anywhere.
It was interesting. So yes, it's coming from a traditional filmmaking, and creating a cinematography. You always just build your shot in the frame. And even then, like when you're doing compositing in VFX world, only you're doing whatever is in front of you. And if you pull the camera back in the 3D world, this side is empty. So even also in the sets, that whatever is the shot's gonna be, none of these parts matter, only this part. But for me, it was always like kind of weird, because what is here is 360. I know the environments and I see all of them. But I was creating the shots back in day, before in VR or games. I was always trying to build the entire world for me to even understand and write this story. So actually, VR just completely fits for me, because now I get to design and everything. If I put in one pillar over there, we are very meticulous designers, because you putting your face up to the pillar, and I have to make sure that all those tiny designs and ornaments and everything is there, because we care. And then I think that showed how much the players paying attention to, oh wow, this is very detailed. And then the storytelling wise, think about this. You go in a site, any ancient ruin site, and whether in Greece and whether in the Middle East, or in going back to thousands of years old in different archaeological sites. The environment, if you're just standing there, environment giving you the story.
Yes.
And you don't have to have a narration or anything. That's the power of the ruins, and that's the power of the civilization over the centuries and millennials, that giving you some kind of stories. So I think that is a one factor that we needed to make sure this has to be very immersive. And of course, you're going to have an NPC, guided NPC that
your sister Allegra.
Yeah. So what dialogue has to be not, it shouldn't be annoying, and it should be, guiding you and giving you enough information. But also you have to have a lot of mystery boxes, that if the environment is well done, you can just sit down on the floor, meditate. You can sit down on the floor, just like take it all in. And I think that's one of the great factor from the reviews that a lot of people come in. I don't want to play right now. I just want to take it all in. I want to stand here to just look.
Yeah, incentivizing curiosity is how you progress our game.
Yeah.
And you don't need the dialogue. You don't need much other than just the attention span to look around.
But the difficulties is definitely the making, even in Uncharted, as you said, like the cutscenes are framed. Like cutscenes are not 360. So the keeping the player's attention, it is the hardest thing to achieve in VR, because if there's a scene happening in front of you, and if the player turns here, then you're missing it. So you have to find a way to pull their attention. And one cheap way to do it, as soon as the player's turning here, then game forces you to look at this way.
And we don't do that.
I personally don't like that, because it's just like, hey, I couldn't find any solution, so I'm just deciding to forcing you to look at this way. But the more creative version is, if you're looking at this way, because in real life The world is not going to shut down for you. You might miss this way, this action, but there is maybe, if you well design, maybe creature is doing something here, and if you look at here, the light bursts out from here, that you suddenly following this light, and that light, taking your focus where you're supposed to look at it. Or if you missed everything, next time when you play, you get to see a lot of new things.
Elaborating more on that, how you guys are musicians and filmmakers, how has that helped in the game design process with the narrative and the puzzle elements and stuff like that?
It's a good question. Probably a lot, since I think we took a pretty unique take on what even like a puzzle adventure game is. It is more like you're living inside this story than it is Myst or a game where it's about, hey, figuring out this intricate puzzle, memorizing something and taking it over here and using that information to further even more advanced puzzles. Our games, it's more about, as Amir put it, creating empathy. You're going through this game and using your musical superpowers or music theory knowledge that you don't need to know a lick of music theory, even though we get you to play like scales and modes and all this really interesting music theory stuff without you ever having to even know you're doing it. And that's really what where our puzzles and the strengths of our puzzle comes from, the universal language of music. So it has this sort of innate quality that we all sort of understand, but at the same time it can be universally enjoyed. And ultimately it's really more about progressing and using that to create empathy for the wildlife around you, and ultimately at the end of the game saving and taking care of the Harpa, which is our there's no violence in our game, so calling it a boss is really not a great way of expressing it, but ultimately you are making your way to this giant, it's basically a moth the size of a bus based on a harp, and it is the heart and the soul of the jungle, of the forest of Ionia, and it's hurt, and you help it, not to give everything away. Really, our storytelling most certainly has led us to creating what we feel is a fairly unique VR experience, and game rather.
You guys talk about some of the creatures that we'll encounter in your game, and we'll also went into designing their physical attributes as well as their musical themes and stuff like that.
I think there's a lot of R&D went on it, and I think we were a little bit lucky because we were doing this over the years in creating these creatures and writing these things on a paper before even we decided making a game. So,
before we even knew what VR was.
Yeah. So I think that helped us because we knew the certain creatures, what's their backstory, how they're living, what's the anatomy, and what they're made of. It's the rule is, yes, the designers get freedom to do whatever they want, but we have a blueprint. Basically, every inspiration comes from the symbols and the music instruments and their shapes and their names. So therefore, the Harpa the name comes from the harp. So that we took a giant moth, but also inspired from a blue morpho. And we said, okay, what if we take the wings and turn a harp shape? But the wings doesn't have the classic flat surfaces, so we're going to have the strings on it. So what's the strings means?
And what does it sound like?
What does it sound like, and why the strings? So that when it's flap the wings and you get to hear the vibrations. So all these things and come out. Then we decided, okay, this in the story was attracting certain kind of creatures in the dark. So what is it, how is navigating there? Is it, seeing it like night vision? So we then inspired from an anglerfish, then we put it on the harp, on that creature, and a little bioluminescence antenna that gives that kind of approach.
And really, all of these creatures tie into our experience with music, but also just our personal experiences. That blue morpho is a very rare type of, I believe it's actually a moth, right, or a butterfly. Regardless, it's a rare creature in the Amazon, and we were lucky enough to capture it when we were on our travels. And that really applies to almost every other aspect of our game. It has some tie to our team or some collaborator of our team over the past 10 years. Another really fun animal is the pantoise. Not outside of some of just our beta testers. Really, it's not in the demo yet, and no one's really tried it. But it is this giant tortoise based on a hang drum, basically.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And Yeah, and so its shell is based on an instrument, and you really can see and understand the lore of this creature, and ultimately like the size and the mass of it is probably one of the more impressive creatures of the game. We also got frogweros, which are based off of stringed instruments, and they're like these giant frog-like creatures that have, very similar to the harpa, are strung together so that when they fly and glide, they create this sort of whistling string-like sound. We also have.
I think the Brassource is the funnest part because when we were designing and I went to art director, I was like, okay, Charlie, I want something. I need this whole animal, but let's figure it out. What is the instrument going to be? And we were just like looking at, okay, what it is. So I was saying like a giant neck, like a giraffe and all this stuff. It's like, okay, the best thing would be, why don't we take this shape? And then the Brassource exactly turned into this.
So our demo is live on Steam right now during PAX, and so that is one of the creatures you will see in the demo. And the Brachiosaur is probably one of our most fun. As you progress down this giant open elevator shaft, that Brachiosaurus comes over and is looking at you, and you get to see the full scale and weight of what this creature is.
Little Jurassic Park moment over there.
Yeah, and then a handful of other creatures as well.
Your game's going to be on the Vive, Oculus. Do you have plans for Oculus Quest at the moment?
We absolutely do. That's why the game actually isn't out. We would have been out in December, maybe early January. We were aiming for it, but then we got the green light for Oculus Quest and PlayStation VR. So we thought, hey, it's worth releasing on all platforms and waiting. We want to make sure we do this right. It was hard for the team to make that decision because we so very much wanted our baby out in the world and publicly available to everyone, especially because the PC version, when we started making, there was only PC VR headsets. So the PC VR version is absolutely gorgeous. It's the one that we optimize and put our heart and soul to. But we felt it was definitely necessary, especially when such a large part of the VR gaming market is now Oculus Quest and of course PlayStation having a big part of that chunk too. We wanted to make sure everyone had the opportunity to play. We also are donating proceeds. 5% of proceeds go to the Wildlife Warriors, the Steve Irwin's foundation for helping wildlife. And we want to make sure too that we have the largest market opportunity so that we can get as much donations over to them as well. And so we are in the process of porting that. We're going through testing right now, and we're most certainly going to be releasing in Q3 of this year.
Now, I'm just curious, did the COVID pandemic affect the development of the game at all? Or were you guys, it sounds like you guys were already remote before the pre-pandemic.
So in terms of remote, yes. One lucky thing is that Road 2 has worked with international developers, designers, and artists for the past 10 years, and it's mostly always been remote. Yeah. We're hubbed here in Boston, but ultimately we're working with, like, for example, our lead developer is down in Georgia. We got someone in Maryland, someone over in England. We got people on the West Coast. Down one of our designers, character designers, is down in Costa Rica.
Yeah,
Costa Rica. So we had already worked all over the place, and we know how to do that, and we work remotely well. But what really hit us with COVID was initially we were looking at location-based entertainment to be a big push for Ionia. We even based the initial design of the game around location-based because of a lot of the deals we had, a lot of the opportunities. We were going to be on cruise ships. We were going to be try and get into every single mom and pop LBE around and really be like the quintessential game against all of the violence that is just, the majority of games you could potentially play. Yeah. So that obviously overnight just disappeared. Every LOI, every agreement I had just out the door, and it was just like, oh, drawing board. Let's figure out what's going on.
And that's a big change.
That was a huge change.
You have to now think, because location bases, like you designing that specific for a location, and if you take the location, you cannot give that to the gamers because then it's just an experience. So how do you take it from there to start the thinking tethered headset? So that was a big curve for us.
But the way I like to look at it, it ended up making the game better because one of my favorite movies of all time is Hook. It's like a 1991 1, I think, with Robin Williams as an old Peter Pan, right? If anybody hasn't seen it, please go watch that movie. It's a great movie. The soundtrack by John Williams is amazing. But with that film, 10 days into production, they were supposed to be a giant live dance show. Like that was supposed to be a musical. And they realized, hey, like, it's not working out so well. Let's go back and let's turn this into a traditional film. And in the stage, in the sets, became these sort of magical, beautiful places to instill a traditional film. And in a way, that sort of happened with us too, is where we worked so hard on this environment, so hard on the ability to look around at any given time, like we were talking earlier, and be able to enjoy and also learn how to progress the game through your environment. We did a lot of that focused on location-based entertainment, but then when we added like free locomotion, we added more capability of locomotion for teleportation, where you can go, how you can get somewhere. Then it really opened up the game in a really interesting way that might have not been approached if we would have tried to go straight to consumer. So it worked out.
Now, can you talk about for someone who's not a musician, doesn't know anything about music theory, will this game help them understand like notes and keys and things to like, understand music composition?
Yeah.
I mean, like, arguably it's more a game than it is something that's going to teach you anything. But you do end up
subconscious.
Yeah, so it's subconscious, right? Like for example, you'll learn how to conduct a 4/4 pattern, and you'll never even know how or why. Like you don't even know it's a 4/4 pattern. Yeah. It's like the same pattern that a conductor would do on stage in front of an orchestra is the exact pattern you'll do. Same with learning some certain modes. You'll be playing something that is an exact representation of a marimba, basically, but you would never necessarily need to know that or know how to play a marimba. And then we'll make you play actual music theory in chords and scales and modes on it, but again, not necessarily having to know like this is C, G, C or certain notes.
But check this out. We did try back in day in Vegas when we were doing trade shows. So this old lady came and played one of our, this puzzle. She solved it with the hints. That design is a marimba, but we also had a little tiny xylophone. As soon as she takes it up, he did remember what is what, which is, I think that's, what we're talking about. It's a powerful tool to anyone, that you don't have to be a musician. And that's one of the things that we were really paying attention. You can be a musician, you're definitely going to see every single geeky part that we designed it, where things comes in. But we want to make sure that we don't just throw ideas out. Everything makes sense, it matches with the music theory. Quickly, given an example, our gods coming from the 7 notes. But the way that what we learned, the circle of fifth and everything, what you're looking at the piano, that what note comes, and then if the first note comes, we were like, why don't we create that as a roots, and then it gives the life. And
the
then
first of the gods.
And then the fifth comes in the piano. Then we said, okay, then let's start to create the skies. That is the the creating. And then the lower chord comes. Now let's create the caves. And now you have the first harmony. So we actually went that deep in it to really creating a mythology, and that's where we're saying that music mythology.
So in a nutshell, more than teaching you music theory, it inspires you to maybe fall in love with it, or to understand the potential of it, and give you a sort of an artistic taste of way a musician loves music theory inside.
And then my last question is, where can people go to find more information about your game? When does it release, and what platforms will it be on?
Excellent. So please, anyone who's interested in learning more, you can visit Steam. Just type in Ionia. You'll be able to find it there, as well as our website, www.rotu.com. That's also where you can find more information about Viveport, Steam, Oculus, and really wherever VR games are sold, we're going to be available. Also, you can learn more about the lore. You can learn more about what Road to Entertainment does as a company. We're actually getting in, we do virtual production as well, and a lot of other projects. So I would love for anybody interested in learning more about us to come follow us. Same, they can find us on our Discord, also on YouTube. Look for any of our Ionia cinematic or Ionia gameplay videos. we'll be releasing Q3 of this year very soon. We'll be making a release date announcement within the next 6 weeks, and also will be available for the for Steam. Any of the tethered PC VR headsets will be available for Quest, Quest 2, PlayStation VR, and will also be available on the Windows Store.
And is this you guys planning to do? Is it a trilogy, an anthology? Like how deep will this series go if it was up to you?
We so very much want to tell you what's going on right now. It's so hard to keep our mouths shut. The story will continue, and just like we've announced this publicly before, but it is a VR series, it won't be in Ionia in the jungle. In our world, as we talked about, the lands of our world, of the giant supercontinent of Pangaea, are based around the modes of music. So our lands are Ionia, Doria, Phrygia, Lydia, and so on and so forth. So right now, there is going to be more of the Rhythm of the Universe saga in the future.
Yeah.